Gary, 1985 was a very busy year for you. You had a hit with the Out in the Field single, you released the Run for Cover album, and you toured in Japan, the UK and Europe. But this year we haven't seen or heard too much of you. What's been going on lately?
I've been recovering from 1985. No, actually what I've been doing most of the years, I've been writing material for the next album. And rather get into a situation that like I did last year, where I didn't actually end up with enough material for the record before we went in the studio, I decided that I'd have the whole thing prepared really well this time. So I installed an 8-track studio in my house, and I've basically been working on that since January. And I've now got about 7 songs together, so I'm pretty much on target.
Right. So on the last album, Run for Cover, you used about 5 different producers, I think, including yourself.
Yeah.
Is this the intention?
5.
4.5 or so. 4.5 or so.
Okay.
Is this the intention with the next album too, or do you want to get one producer to take care of everything this time?
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to split the production credits up to that extent again, so I think maybe we'd use like 2 people this time, and maybe I'd be like the half again, but maybe I'd sort of do 2 or 3 things with a co-production engineer type situation.
What sort of names have you got in mind? I know that Pete Collins is a
Pete
favourite
Collins,
of yours.
yeah. I'd like to do at least 2 tracks with Peter this time, and I'm also working with a guy called Pete Smith who did the Sting album. I'm very excited about working with him because I was very fond of that album. And we've been also using a couple of different musicians this time, people that I hadn't come into contact with before, like the guys from Reflex, a guy called Rowley, whose second name escapes me, he's the drummer, right, and Nigel something Scott, who is the bass player. And I'll still be using people like Andy Richards on keyboards and people like that.
Well, it sounds an interesting project, because I thought the Run for Cover album represented something of a step forward, in the sense you took the traditional power of hard rock and combined it with more sophisticated production techniques. Is this the way you're going again on the next one?
Yeah, I'd like to take yet another step forward with that idea, because I think so many of the so-called metal bands or hard rock bands or whatever you want to call them have been stagnant for a long time now. I think it's been a situation where they haven't wanted to get involved with the new technology and the new production ideas, and I think that there's a way of doing that which hasn't been fully explored yet, and that's what I want to do.
Do you think there's a danger of you becoming a little too left field, losing the hard rock fans who are your support at the moment?
Well, I hope not. I'd like to think that the audience that I attract are flexible enough to want to come with me through any doors I would choose to sort of go through. And up to now it's been really good, because although we may have lost some of the really hardcore people, we've still managed to keep the people who were loyal to me for the last 5 years anyway. Even when I was in LYNZEE, we've still got some of those people. And we've also brought some new people into the audience, like through the singles. We noticed last year there were a lot of older people who would have come in through just hearing things like Out in the Fields and Empty Rooms, and probably didn't know anything about me until they heard those songs.
Well, you certainly have a good following amongst hard rock fans, but other musicians also seem to rate you as a guitar player too. You're like a musician's musician as well.
Well, that on its own would be like fatal, but luckily we have managed to attract a big enough audience of people who actually pay to go to shows, because as you know, musicians don't pay to go to concerts.
That's true, but
get on the guest list, right?
But I was speaking to Vivian Campbell, who used to be in Dio, on the phone the other day, and he said that as far as he's concerned, you're still God's gift to guitar playing.
Oh, good. Well, I wouldn't go that far, but it's a nice. I mean, it's very flattering when other musicians do appreciate what you're doing, because it means that it gives you that extra bit of credibility. Whereas if it was only people who didn't play instruments that appreciated you, you could be bluffing your way all the way through, and who knows whether you could play or not.
That's true. I think that's quite enough compliments for the moment. While I think of some insults to hurl at you later on, let's take a look at you on video. I think if we look hard enough, we could maybe see your halo shine.
Yeah, definitely.
The next Gary Moore album should be out early next year, but in the meantime, you're going to be making some appearances at European festivals.
That's right, yeah.
So you're going to play 1 show in the UK, which is second on the bill to Marillion at Milton Keynes, and 4 shows in Europe as special guests to Queen.
That's
I think there's a headline date somewhere too, isn't there?
There's a warm-up show, which is in Guildford, and it's I think it's the 2nd of June.
What about Finland? I thought you might be playing a show in Finland, or was
that's
not
later on.
yet?
Yeah, that's Turku. Yeah, that's right. I think it's in August, actually.
Right. I think the best thing to do if people that want to go along is check the local press for exact details, but all these shows are in June, July, and the Finnish one, I think, in August.
That's right, yes.
Tell us, though, what's the band going to be for these shows? The same band that toured with you last year?
Gary Ferguson, Neil Carter, Bob Daisley.
So is Bob Daisley now a full member of the Gary Moore band?
Yeah, FOOL, full member, right. As much as anybody can be, but you've seen the way the band's gone in the past, so I'd hate to swear to any permanent lineup now. But basically, I mean, I was very happy with the band on the last tour, and I would like to keep it together as long as possible.
Okay, so as you said, you're going to be making these festival appearances. Will there be a new single out to coincide with this?
Well, we're talking about bringing an instrumental single out late in the summer called "The Loner," which originally appeared on one of Cozy's albums, but this is a completely different. Yeah, and it's a completely different version. I've written a new piece in the middle of it and sort of changed the whole feel of it. But it's an interesting way of doing it.
So how much has the death of Phil Lynott really affected your plans? Because I would imagine you would have wanted to do a follow-up to Out in the Fields with Phil, sharing vocals with you.
Well, there was one song which I was working on called Wild Frontier, which I've now demoed. And the interesting thing is that I've talked to Scott Gorham about possibly doing it with him and Brian Downey.
So really? This will be on the next Game or album, would it?
Yeah. I haven't spoken to Brian about it yet, but we're doing this thing in Ireland this Saturday that you probably know about, this big charity concert.
Well, it's some sort of a Thin Lizzy reunion, isn't it? I think
That's
it's a tribute to Phil.
Yeah, that was part of it, but it's like a 12-hour show. It's kind of Ireland's answer to Live Aid in a way or something. And it's going to be like a 12-hour live TV thing, and I guess like U2 and all these different Irish artists, Rory Gallagher, people like that are going to be on it. And the idea was to have the Lizzie guys get together again and have guest singers. So Bono from U2 was going to sing one song, Geldof would sing one, and Van Morrison would sing one.
And who's going to be taking care of bass?
Of bass, Bob Daisley.
Oh, from your band?
Yes, right,
that's
yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we'll look forward to that, but I noticed that with the Run for Cover album, you didn't tour America to back up its release.
That's right.
Why was that?
Well, because there wasn't any demand, and I think when we spoke last year, I said that I'd only go to America if there was a demand for us to be there, and if the record company did their job and, you know, got our names about, which in fact wasn't the case. So we said rather than go out there and spend $500,000 to sell, you know, 60,000 albums, we'd rather be where we were needed and get on with the next record.
But do you still consider that a very important market to break eventually?
Yeah. I mean, every artist really considers America to be a big challenge, and you have to really hit it big in America if you want to be in the so-called big time. So we certainly haven't given up on it yet, but, you know, until we feel that there is a sufficient demand for us to tour there, there's no point.
Well, it's nice to see you in England at the moment. The best of luck with the new album and these shows coming up. Thanks for stopping by, Gary.
Thanks a lot.